Welcome. In this video, I'm going to talk about creating an Ethernet LAN, and we're going to be using Cisco Packet Tracer version 8.0, or at least version 8 or some version afterwards. So anyways, version 8, the reason I bring that up, made some big improvements to the physical mode. Now, using Packet Tracer and doing network topologies and configuring networks, you don't need to use physical mode, but I want to show you this because it is quite cool. If you are going to use physical mode, you need to build your network in physical mode, and then you can switch to logical mode. We'll see logical mode here in a moment as well. So first of all, shout out to my friend Dennis Frezzo at Cisco Systems, whose team develops Packet Tracer. Great improvement, especially with 8.0. Okay, excuse me. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to physical mode. Okay, so click on that tab right here. I'm in home city. Okay, well, we're just going to click on home city. We see corporate office. Let's click on that. And if I scroll down, I see main wiring closet. So let's click on that. And I'm in this empty room, nothing in there. Okay, so at the top here, we have some items we can add to our wiring closet, like a rack or a table. And we're going to add both of these. So let me start with adding a rack. So I create a rack and I scroll down. I can see the whole rack here. Okay, I'm going to add a couple of tables. So let me add a table. Where'd that table go? Oh, down here. There it is. Let me add a second table. The table is where I'm going to put my PCs. In the rack is where I'm going to put my Ethernet switches and my router. Okay, so let's go ahead and first add 4 PCs. So down at the bottom left here, along the top, we see different categories of devices and cables. For example, networking devices. Okay, then the bottom gives us different choices out of that category, like routers. You can see the various routers here, switches, hubs, wireless devices, end devices. We have these end devices here, but we also have home devices, smart city devices. We have cables here. We'll talk about those more in a moment as well. So let's go to end devices. I'm going to go to PC. So I'm going to leave it here on end devices. I'm going to go here to the PC. Click once on this. Gives me my crosshairs as I move up here, and let's add it to this table. Okay, then I'm going to add this PC here, and notice if I stay wanted over one of these, a bunch of information comes up. Don't worry about any of that right now. I'm going to add 2 more PCs, one to this table, and then one to this table. Okay, all right. So now I've got my 4 computers. Let's go ahead and add the switches to our wiring rack here. Okay, so here's our rack right here. I'm going to go to network devices. Then this second one, switches. And I'm going to go over here and add 2 3560. So I'm going to click on 3560 here. I'm going to go into the rack and click on it there. Wow, what does that look like? Let's zoom in. By the way, you can zoom in by using this little magnifying glass here. And there's our switch. We'll take a closer look at this again here in a moment. So and we can do the same thing, by the way, if I want to zoom in. Well, let's take a look at the PCs. Okay, yeah, so we can zoom in on things and zoom out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and we scroll up there. I'm going to add another switch, 3560. Click there, click here. Okay, so there's my 2 Ethernet switches. Okay, I'm also going to add a router. Okay, so we'll talk more about this here in a moment, but I'm networking devices, but I'm going to go to this bottom row, far left, routers. And that router I'm going to add is this one here, a 4331. So let me click on this. Okay, and I'm going to go up to the rack and add it right there. So don't worry about what all these devices do right now. This can make more sense later. Okay, but let's zoom in and take a look at some of these devices in here. So here's my rack. Okay, and here's the router that I added. Okay, here's my two switches. Notice that when we added the first device, it actually added this power distribution panel. This is like where you put in your power cords. And then in the back of this, there'd actually be another cord that would plug into a power outlet. Okay. All right, so what I want to do first is actually just physically connect my four PCs, connect two to one switch and two to the other switch. Then I'm going to interconnect the two switches and I'm going to connect the router to the switch. Okay. This will all make more sense a little later, but let's start connecting these devices. So let me zoom out. And what I'm going to do here is go to this first PC. Okay. And I'm going to connect a cable from its fast Ethernet port to one of the switches. So I'm going to go here to the lightning bolt symbol. And the cable I'm going to use is this one right here. It's an Ethernet copper straight through. Okay. So I click on that and let's zoom in here so you can see exactly where we're going. Okay, got my cable selected, my copper straight through, and I'm going to connect it right here to this fast Ethernet port. Boom, notice the green link light came on. Okay, where the other end of the cable going to go? Well, let's add it to the switch. Let's add it to the first switch we put in, and we can actually put it on any of these ports here. Notice that these ports say fast Ethernet. And I kind of wand over it there. There we go. Fast Ethernet is 100 megabit ports. We have two ports over here that are gigabit Ethernet ports, 1 gigabit. Okay, let's add them. Let's add the first PC to any one of these fast Ethernet ports. I'll just click on that. Wow. First of all, look, there's a amber light. Do you see that? Okay, see that amber light? Okay, that's going to turn green in about 50 seconds. We'll learn more about that, but it's running a protocol called spanning tree protocol. Okay, so let me zoom out and we can actually see the connection there between the PC and the switch. Zoom out a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so you can see that it is connected to that switch. Isn't this cool? All right. Oh, do you notice that light went green? We'll see that closer in a moment. All right, let's do the same thing. I'm going to connect this second PC. And if I want, I can do it right from here. If you can see that, fast Ethernet. And I'm going to connect it to a switch port here, any one of these fast Ethernet, doesn't matter. Okay, let's zoom in and see what we just did. Okay, so that one went green. This one will go green in a moment. Don't worry, when you wand over a device, you see, whoa, what is all that? Don't worry, we'll talk about that, but it's just giving you kind of at a glance any configuration information on that device. Okay, all right, so we have two PCs connected to one port, or one switch, excuse me. Okay, the port's on one switch. Let's connect these two PCs to this other switch, this other Ethernet switch. So let me go ahead and do that. And you can zoom in if you want. I'm just going to go to any of these fast Ethernet ports. There we go. And let's do this here. And we'll put it over here. Okay. So if we zoom in here, we on the switch, the two switches, we see that we have two PCs connected to this Ethernet switch, two PCs connected to this Ethernet switch using an Ethernet straight through cable. Okay, now what if we want the devices on both switches to be able to communicate with each other? For that, we're going to use something called a crossover cable. So I'm still at my lightning bolt here. Okay, I'm going to go over here to copper crossover. And so I'm going to click on that. And I can actually choose any two ports here on the two switches, any port on the two switches and interconnect them. I'm actually going to do, let's use this gigabit port here, okay? And connect it to this gigabit port here. So going from switch to switch, by the way, we use a copper crossover. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. Notice the lights are amber. They will go green here shortly. So now we've interconnected the two switches. Okay. Now I still have this router up here. We'll learn more about that in a moment and more later. But the router is our default gateway. It's our way out of this network. It is what connects us to other networks. So what I'm going to do is connect one of these switches, this right here, this gigabit port here, to this gigabit port on the Ethernet switch. So let's go ahead and do that. For that, I'm going to use a copper straight through cable. So let's go back here to our copper straight through cable. I'm going to select the port here on this switch, and let's zoom in on the router so we can see exactly where we're going. And I'm going to put it right here on this gigabit 000 port. Now I have a cable interconnecting the router and the switch. Okay. And that's also a straight through cable. So the only crossover cable we're using here is to connect the two switches. All right, we have everything physically connected, okay? But they're not what we call logically connected. We need to configure our 4 computers. We need to configure what we call IP addressing information. So let's go ahead and do that. So on this first PC, let me click on this here. All right, I'm going to go to the config tab right there. Okay, and I'm going to go under interface fast Ethernet 0. And you see IP configuration. This is IP version 4 configuration. And we're going to do a static configuration. We'll learn more about IP addressing later. But I'm going to give this PC the address 192.168.1. Now those first 3 numbers, that's going to be the network portion of our address. You will notice that all 4 of our computers and our router will all have an IPv4 address beginning with those 3 numbers. And then a unique last number, this case, 100. So this is actually known as the network portion of the IPv4 address, and this is the unique host portion. We'll talk more about that when we get into IPv4. I'm going to click on the subnet mask, and it defaults to this subnet mask. We'll talk more about that later, but all of our devices on this network, our 4 computers and our router, will all need to have the same subnet mask. Okay. All right, there's one other thing I need to do on this computer, and that's go up to global settings. And I need to configure or give this device the IPv4 address of the local router. So our router is going to get this address right here. It's 192.168.1.1. I'm telling this computer, this is the address of your local router, your default gateway, your local post office. This is where you will send your IPv4 packets when they are destined for a different network. We'll learn more about that later. But one thing you'll notice is all 4 PCs will be using the same post office, same local router, same default gateway. Okay, let's go to this next PC, do the same thing. Going to go to the config tab, interface, fast Ethernet, static, 192.168.1. Remember, that's going to be the same on all of them. And this, I'll give this the unique host 101. Okay, so that will be unique. This is the same on all of our computers and our router. This will be unique. Same subnet mask. We'll go to settings, default gateway. Again, this is the address of our local router that we'll be configuring. Okay, and close that. By the way, when I wand over a device now, like this one here, you'll actually see that information we added. Where's the subnet mask? That's at /24 at the end of the address. We'll learn more about that later. Okay, let's go to this PC. Going to go to config tab, fast Ethernet, IPv4 address 192.168.1. There's the network portion. 102, there's the unique host portion. There's our common subnet mask, settings, default gateway, 192.168.1.1. That's the IPv4 address of our router. You see IPv6 down here? We'll talk about IPv6 later. You'll learn that that's one of Rick's favorite protocols. Okay, our last computer here. Let's give it config tab. Let's give it its IP addressing information. It's going to get the same network portion of the IPv4 address, 192.168.1. And a unique host portion, 103. Same common subnet mask, settings, again, the IP address that we're going to be giving our router here next, 1.1. Okay, there's the default gateway. Okay, now we have configured all 4 of these computers. They're ready to go. Okay, we'll talk about how we can verify that they can communicate with each other shortly. Okay, one of the things I still need to do is configure this router. Now, there's nothing we need to do on the Ethernet switches. Later we will, when we will learn about why we would want to configure an Ethernet switch. There's things that we would want to do to be able to manage it remotely and do some other things. Learn about that later. But we need to configure this router. Okay, so I'm just going to click on the router, and I'm going to expand this a little bit. The port that we are connected to, let me kind of go back to this here, zoom in. The port that we're connected to is the gig 000 port. Notice that? Okay, gig 000 port. Okay, so that's the port we need to provide in the IP address. Okay, so I'm going to click on this. Let's go over to the config tab here, expand this. I'm going to go over here. We see all this cool stuff. Interface, there's our gig 000. So that's the interface we want to configure. Wow, you might notice something as I'm doing this. Equivalent iOS commands. We're going to be learning how to use Cisco iOS commands. Normally, this is how we configure devices in the real world, right? We actually will be using the command line interface. But here in Packet Tracer, for our first go, we'll just do it using the little GUI here. But I'm gigabit 000. I'm going to give it an IPv4 address. Remember, we told everybody, hey, the default gateway is 192.168.1.1, our local router. Well, guess what? This is that local router. Okay. All right. And we're going to click on the subnet mask. We want it to have the same subnet mask as everybody else. One of the things I have to do with the router is I actually have to turn its interface on. So see that in the upper right-hand corner? There we go. Notice the green link light came on when we did that over here. Okay. Now, one of the other things I need to do is on the router, this is simulating just exactly what we'd want to do if we were using the command line interface, is I need to go to global settings, and I need to save this information in the router. If the router reboots, this information won't be saved. The IP address we just configured on gigabit 000. So what we want to do is under NVRAM, click save. Okay, and that is saving the running, what we call the running config to startup config. We'll learn about that later, but you definitely want to do that. Okay, so let me close this, and let me do one other thing. Let me save this, my packet tracer file. I don't want to lose all this great work I did. Okay. So I'm just going to say, leave it under my default saves. You can kind of see I've got one demo already there. I'll call this Rick's LAN, with one S, Rick's LAN. Okay, and it will save it as a .pkt file. Okay, so make sure you know where you're saving it, right? I know where this is going. Normally I'd save it in a specific folder. I know where this is going, but know where you're saving it, okay? Know what folder it's going into. I'm going to click save here. That's been saved. Wow, okay. Well, what did we just do? Let's take a look here. Let me zoom out, and I think I have everything connected. Okay, how can I verify? I got 4 computers now, 2 on one switch, two on the other switch, the two switches interconnected, can these devices communicate with each other? Let's take a look. So let me go to this computer here. I'm going to go to desktop, and just like a real command prompt, I'm going to go to the Windows command prompt, the DOS prompt. First of all, I can use this command called ipconfig. This shows me the addressing information I just configured. There's my IPv4 address, subnet mask, default gateway. Okay. Then I'm going to use a command called ping. Ping allows me to verify IP connectivity. So I'm going to say ping and give it the IP address of another device. Well, let's do the 192.168.1.101. Can I communicate with the device that is on the same switch as me? I'm getting some replies. Yes. By the way, if this first or even second reply fails, it says timed out, don't worry about it. That's natural. Okay, it's common. We'll talk about why that happens later. Something called, it times out because something called ARP. We'll get there later, don't worry. But what we just did was we sent 4 what we call ICMP echo requests, pings. And this device 101 returned 4 replies saying, yes, we're communicating. Let me see if I can communicate with one of the other PCs. I hit the up arrow there, and I'm going to hit the backspace. Can I communicate with one of the PCs on one of the other switches? Let's try. Yes. Can I communicate with that other one? Might as well try the other PC too. Now I can communicate with all 3 of the other PCs. Can I communicate with my router, my default gateway? Let's try. I'm going to back up there. There we go. 192.168.1.1. Remember, that's our default gateway, the router's address right there. Okay. Am I able to communicate with that router? Yes. So that's working too. Oh my gosh, this is really cool. All right. So this is physical mode. We just built our first network. Okay. We're going to be expanding on this quite a bit. Okay. But there's also logical mode. So let me show you logical mode. And that's usually where I do a lot of my work. Okay. I don't always set the computers up in physical mode. But again, if you want to use physical mode, this is where you have to set them up. You have to do physical mode first. Let's go to logical mode. Oh my God, this is a mess. All right, let's move these around. Okay, so I'm looking at a logical topology. Here's my switches. There we go. There's one of the switches. There's the other switch. There's the router. And by the way, I can zoom in. Okay. Oh, see, this is looking at a network topology. Okay. And in this mode here, by the way, there's some other things I can do. See this right up here. If I want to delete something, I can click on that and delete a device or a cable. Okay. So let's say I've made a mistake. And if I'm just working in logical mode, that's fine. But again, if I've been doing things in physical mode, it's best to work there when adding and removing cables and devices. If you don't care about physical mode, and you don't have to use physical mode, we can add things right here in logical mode, okay? By just selecting devices, adding another computer, let's say. I could add another computer. I could then add it to, I'm not sure what's going to happen as far as physical mode here, but I could then add this cable from fast Ethernet to the switch. This is what it looks like in logical mode. Okay. I can do the same thing as far as configuring that device. I can go over here to config. I can give it an address, 192.168, 1.1, my ones are missing, 104. Subnet mask, default gateway. Look at this. So that now it's got the green link light. Okay. And can they ping? Let's go. Let's see. Should be able to, right? Desktop, command prompt. I can do my IP config command, verify. Yep. Let me try pinging 192.168.1.100. Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look at what that looks like in physical mode now. Oh, look what it did. It put it right on top. Okay. So yeah, if you can start off in physical mode and then switch between physical and logical mode, but there it is. But that's probably not how you want to stack your computers, right? All right. But logical mode can be very easy to work in. So if I wanted to delete a device, by the way, I can go right up here to this symbol here. And notice it's kind of got that X. I can delete that, or I can just delete, first I can delete a cable, but I can also delete a device. Okay, it warns me, you want to delete that device? Yes, delete it. Okay, let's go back up here. I'm gonna get my select tool back so I don't accidentally delete something else. Let's go back to physical mode and it's gone. Can I delete in this mode too? Certainly. So I can delete using this delete, just like we did, and delete either a device or a cable. Okay. Again, don't forget to save, okay, before you're done. And I think that's it. So very cool. You can switch between physical and logical mode now. This is typically where Rick will be doing a lot of his explanations when we're talking about things. Oh, there is something else I want to show you, adding a note. So I'll go right here at note, and here, this is usually how I add notes. Like here, I'm going to put IPv4 address 192.168.1.100 subnet mask 255.255.255.0, and I'll put default gateway. Make sure I'm spelling everything right. 192.168.1.1. And then click off it, and there we go. So let me get my select tool. I can move this note around. I can put it right there now. It's just a note. I'm going to select this. Okay, I'm going to do edit, copy, and I'm going to make some copies. So I can put one there. Of course, I need to change this information, right? One there, one there, one here for the router, and then I can just change what I need to change. This is 101. This is 102. This is 103, and the router's 1. And of course, the router is the default gateway, so we can remove that. Okay. All right. And now I have notes. Okay. So that's a nice way of adding notes to your network. Okay. I'm going to save that. And again, I can wand over any of these devices and get the information that I configured, make sure my notes are correct. Okay. If I go back to physical mode, do I see those notes? No. That's just for logical mode. Okay. All right. Very cool. This is so much fun. I hope you enjoy doing this. Physical mode, again, we get to physically see how these things interconnect. Okay. Called rack and stack. All right. Okay, well, thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video and look forward to working with you more on networking, packet tracer, and all kinds of cool stuff. Have a great day, everybody.